So think about that. All these things are interrelated. Yes?
How would you explain being consciously unaware of an addiction?
How you become, good question. Let me go to the cage bird. Have a client that said, I was raised by bikers. I wasn't taught to read till I was 10. Wait, how do you not get taught to read if you're 10 if you're going to public school? Well, the bikers aren't sending that person to school. That person started smoking pot and drinking alcohol at 5. Now, they are unaware that that is not what is considered mainstream normal. And they're also told, don't say anything about what's going on at home. Now, who was it outside of their family that taught their family that it was normal for a 5-year-old to drink Budweiser? Because they're not alone. There are other people that do that. Who was it that taught certain college? So imagine that person growing up. Now, how do they form? What's a normal relationship?
They start watching other people.
Okay, they might watch other people, but who are they hanging with? Bikers, TV. Oh, is TV portraying normal, healthy relationship?
No.
Real Housewives of Atlanta? Okay, so my point, what is a real, healthy relationship? How do you know? The reason I date my time back in this field to a summer job in high school when I'm 16 is I'm in a day treatment center with what are called emotionally disturbed children. That was the label. Now, my framework, they were just, black kids living in South Central in nuclear families where dad was an alcoholic and beat mom. And so when a kid has a name like Akadama and his sister is named Midori, what, you got a little brother named Jack Daniels? I mean, what? How are you naming black kids after, like, Japanese plum wine? I mean, I've heard of, black people can be a trip sometimes. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm just saying, white people too. I know. People are a trip. Okay, so these kids would watch television and they would basically say, well, they wouldn't believe what they saw on television because it didn't look like their home. And so what they would do is they would come to the clinic that I was at, and they were stoned. It was obvious they were stoned. And so today we would say they were emotionally disturbed because they had witnessed domestic violence at home, were self-medicating with marijuana from their PTSD behind that, because how do you, as an 8-year-old, adjust to sitting in a classroom after witnessing violence? Can you learn your ABCs? No. You can't. All our counseling technology, and I admit this as a counselor, requires that you use a college-level education. How many people have a college-level education? Counselor speak requires a college-level education. Now, I can notice, and I'm talking about literacy levels. You need a certain level of literacy to be able to understand certain concepts. Otherwise, they're over your head. What if you never learn to read? Then what? It becomes difficult. Right. So you have, what happens when the school system starts losing money because it was not designed to do social service. When you get a classroom of kids like that who've been traumatized, and you didn't train the teachers to recognize, oh, the kid's stoned because of domestic violence. Okay? So, I mean, and this isn't just a black racial thing. This is an issue of poverty and what happens when the schools were not designed to do social service. I mean, that's one of the things that we're observing here at Lane. Okay? People are using us for mental health, for health care, etc. We weren't higher ed wasn't designed for that, and neither were the schools. But here we are. So I'm giving you the skills, and you have to slowly learn them.
But faced with, say, 60 different words for the same diagnosis for let's throw Reagan in a war on the streets and drugs for crime, bipolar, manic depressive. There was like 60 different names over the last 80 years or so. How does one come to grips with all that and overcome these things for a child that stays in an abusive home or being moved about a lot and their social groups are torn apart, and then they're stuck on Ritalin or something like that? I think that's what all diagnosed.
Well, let's back up a second before they prescribe Ritalin. All right? How does one? Well, first you have to acknowledge it, and you have to have an accurate way out. Now, what I mean by an accurate way out is, all right, so if addiction requires the reinforcement of a lie or a series of lies which create an illusion of control, for example. So, Ann Wilson Schaef. So part of the answer to your question there, if we're going to be explicit, is let's say you have a diagnosis of bipolar. Bipolar kind of resembles the state when you're in stimulant addiction. You have ups, you have downs, you have ups, you have downs. So sometimes the stimulant use is an attempt to control. The only thing you can control is your inner reality, so you take something that keeps you up. But what goes up must come down. So that's why if you have dealt with meth addicts before, they go on runs of weeks to avoid the crash. Yeah, well, the drugs of choice may shift, but I mean, people have their different things, right? So, if you had been taught to modify your own brain chemistry just using your breath, you don't need the drugs, okay? Or take a walk in the woods or whatever it is. So, Ann Wilson Schaef talked about in her book, When Society Becomes an Addict, anything you have to lie about is probably some part of some addictive process for you. So truth-telling becomes part of the recovery process. And you see that woven into various recovery frameworks. Okay, so it's not about what's wrong with you. It's what happened to you and your ability to tell the truth about what happened to you. Yes?
So basically about the consciously unaware thing. So like what you're saying is that like being consciously unaware of your addiction means to have...
Well, you're not unaware. You are unaware.
That was out of your control, basically.
It was out of your control as long as you're unaware of it.
Okay.
If you thought it was normal and it actually isn't.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. I get it.
Okay? So one of the things I've made the observation, an addicted population is a controlled population. Okay? If you string people out and make that the norm to string them out, they never get conscious because they're strung out. And alcohol is one of the most powerful tools to do that. So if you take the person, I see you. If you take the person who was raised by bikers with alcohol abuse, it was normal for her to binge drink. right? And so we know, getting back to the whole fetal alcohol syndrome, one of the reasons the drinking age is 21 is your liver is not fully developed until you're 21. So if you start drinking before you're 21, you can do liver damage unless you're part of a genome where that was the regular practice, and then you begin to adapt to it. It still ain't healthy. So here's what the industry does. It teaches you how to binge drink. So it's a physiological fact that if you start binge drinking after 21, it will take you about a decade, possibly, depending on your drinking pattern, to develop an addiction to alcohol. After 21, if you do binge drinking. But under 21, you can become strung out inside of 6 weeks to 6 months. Okay? And what they need you to do is start binge drinking before you're 21. In fact, the research shows, and the tobacco industry knows this, if you haven't started using addictively by the time you're 15, you ain't gonna. Okay? This is the reason. Look, you can argue the science, read Monitoring the Future. Okay? The tobacco industry targets and markets its products to teenagers because they need people smoking and drinking, particularly binge drinking, before 15.
Just tobacco.
Note it, tobacco and alcohol, because they're the same people that are marketing both products.
Makes sense now.
Okay? If you want, and tobacco and alcohol are gateway drugs. Here's what the concept of gateway drug is. Alcohol conditions you to the fact that a substance outside your body changes your consciousness. Tobacco conditions the lungs for smoking. Okay? The reason marijuana is considered a gateway drug is you're usually introduced to alcohol and tobacco first because they're legal. Not legal for you underage, but they're around. So you get daddy the drink and you sneak cigarettes in middle school and yada, yada, yada. Marijuana is the first stage where it's quasi-illegal. Used to be illegal. Now it's quasi-legal. So now that the lungs have been conditioned for smoking by tobacco, now you can smoke a substance that changes your consciousness. And that introduces you to a quasi-underground economy in terms of access. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody starts in the same progression. Copy that. Thanks. So, all these things like we're normal. Okay? Once you had a tobacco industry, which the Indians didn't have a tobacco industry, only adults could smoke and only for prayer. The Indians didn't have an alcohol industry. The only time, the ones that had alcohol, the only time you use alcohol is in ceremony, and you can't use it if you're pregnant, and you have to be an adult, and you don't drink to intoxication. If you're Lakota, the only person who can smoke marijuana is the medicine person. So they have lots of self-limiting features within their society that eliminate addiction. We in America eliminated all those stuff and gave the drug technology to the drug sellers. And their motivation is money. They don't care about your health. It's making money. You had a question. Still have it?
I have a question.
Wait. Perfect.
We kind of strayed way off that topic. It was back to the syndromes and like the bipolar and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so quick and dirty. Bipolar diagnosis. It's describing that you have quote unquote mood swings. Well, you might naturally, it might be natural to have mood swings. Like it might be natural to feel up and to feel down. That might be natural. That might not be the problem. The problem might be in, do you have a strong enough middle so that if you feel good, your behavior is still healthy, and if you feel bad, you know how to do self-care so that you can get back to the middle. Listen, I listen to horrific stories, and I'm paid to do that. Should I be depressed after hearing horrific stories? No. I shouldn't be, but you can't help but be affected by it, so you do good self-care. Go play with a grandkid, go for a walk, go exercise. Make sure I don't eat my stress away, because that eating my stress away doesn't work. So, 2 minutes. They didn't give me that, but I know that it is. So I'm going to give you a breathing exercise. We're not going to do that, but that's probably like the rest of the slides. So the rest of the presentation. So when we talk about one of the basic skills that has been cross-cultural around establishing that balance, one of the first things you do in terms of the technique is bring into balance your breath and control of the breath. So part of natural mind is self-soothing. And part of self-soothing is noticing, okay, when I'm in LA traffic or when I'm coming around the corner 40 miles an hour here at LCC and I'm saying, okay, why are you doing 20, 15 in a 40? What is with Oregonians? But anyway, I'm from LA, so, okay? I need to breathe not 20 times a minute, but maybe more like 4. And that I notice my mood changes with the slower my breath is, the calmer I am. Okay, because I don't smoke joints to feel better. I'm not going to drink a beer to feel better. Bad role modeling. Not self-control, not natural mind. All right, so the week's PowerPoints will be up on Moodle. Remember to do your first week's assignment. It's due Thursday. Bring it, either email it or take it physically to my office. There's a possibility that I might be called out of town for a family gathering. This has been recorded before, so I have next week's episodes already canned, so still come to class.
Where is your office, Doug?
My office is building 1, room 226. Thank you for your attention. This is social science.
I know, but I didn't know. Where do I go?
Wait, didn't you give me this already?
No, that was in our morning.
Oh, right.